I'm Zak Bagans. Tonight, I'm standing in front of a house that has no business still being upright. It leans slightly to the left, like the earth itself has been trying to swallow it for years. Its siding is gray, not painted gray, but the color wood turns after decades of storms and neglect. A single window on the second floor reflects no light. It doesn't shine, it doesn't glint, it absorbs. Locals call it the Loring House. Nobody lives here anymore. Not after what happened. Not after the reports. Not after the sounds beneath the floor. But I'm here because something inside this place never stopped talking. For weeks, neighbors have been hearing voices through the dirt under the house, under the yard, under the street. Whispers that rise through the foundation as if something is calling upward, like a buried thing tapping on a coffin lid. Tonight, I'm here to find out what's whispering and why it has begun using people's names. I shoulder my camera bag and cross the overgrown lawn. The grass is waist high. The air is unnaturally still, the kind of quiet before a lightning strike. Elias follows with the boom mic. Naomi brings up the rear, scanning the windows like something could be watching us from inside already. The front porch sags under my weight. Boards groan like ribs being stepped on. My flashlight sweeps the doorframe. Deep scratch marks run diagonally down the wood. They're too high to be made by animals. Too wide to be fingernails. Too recent to belong to the house's past. I press my hand against the front door. The wood pulses. Not metaphorically. Not imagination. It moves. Like a weak heartbeat. I turn on my recorder. This is Zak Bagans' first entry, the Loring House. The foundation is rumored to breathe. Locals say the ground talks at night. I'm beginning the investigation. The doorknob turns on its own. My entire team freezes. I push the door slowly, and it swings inward without resistance. Inside, the house smells like damp rot and old smoke. Every floorboard is warped. Wallpaper has peeled off the walls like dead skin. But the worst part isn't the decay, it's the shape of the rooms. Every corner in this house feels slightly wrong, as though something tried to build the structure from memory but got the angles just a little off. Doorways are too tall, windows too narrow. Even the ceiling slopes like it's listening. Naomi whispers behind me, "Zak, this place feels like it's waiting." I step deeper into the living room. My flashlight sweeps across a cracked photo frame on the wall. A family portrait, father, mother, 2 children. Someone has scratched the father's face out violently, carving through the glass. The mother's eyes have faded to white, as if erased. Only the children are untouched. The boy looks directly at the camera. The girl looks slightly to the side, as if staring at something the photographer didn't see. As I approach the photo, the floor creaks. Not under my feet beneath the house, the boards rising slightly. A soft, slow exhale pushes dust up between the planks. The foundation breathes. Naomi steps back instinctively. Elias swears under his breath. I lift my recorder. "Can you make that sound again?" Silence. Then a whisper rises. Not from a room, not from the stairs, but from directly below my boots. "Hello?" The voice is soft, childlike, not threatening but wrong, because it's mimicking someone. I heard that voice earlier when Naomi greeted me this morning. The house used her hello. "Naomi," I say quietly, "that was your voice." She shakes her head slowly. "Zak, I didn't say anything." "No, something else did." I kneel, placing my ear close to the floor. The wood radiates faint heat, like a body pressed against the opposite side. Then, knock, knock, knock. A pattern, not random, not settling beams. A code. "Are you hearing that?" I whisper. Elias nods silently, recording. Knock, knock, knock. Pause. Long drag of breath. Then the pattern repeats. It's calling upward. I speak clearly into the cracks of the floor. "Who are you?" The whisper comes instantly. "Still here." My stomach drops, my recorder spikes. The EMF meter in my hand flashes bright red before cutting out completely. The house hums with a low vibration that moves up my legs, into my ribs, buzzing in my teeth. The foundation isn't just breathing, it's speaking in frequencies I can't hear but my body can feel. We move deeper into the house. Every step answers with a creak that is too rhythmic to be coincidence. It's following our movement under the floor, following me. The hallway narrows as we approach the basement door, an old wooden thing with peeling paint. Something about it feels wrong. The doorknob is warm to the touch. I look underneath. A faint light pulses from the cracks, like a candle burning in a sealed room. But no one has been in this house for years. I reach forward, and the light under the door flickers twice. Elias whispers, "Zak, did something just signal us?" I don't respond. My hand is hovering over the knob. There's a pressure here, a subtle push, not of wind or temperature, but intent. The basement is not trying to lure us, it's warning us. Like the house is saying, "Not yet." We continue past the basement and enter the kitchen. The sink is full of dirt. Not dust dirt, fresh, damp, like it was scooped from the yard below. The window above the sink is cracked inward. Something came in, not out. Under the table, I see lines carved into the wood. I lift it carefully. It's words, repeated dozens of times. It remembers. It remembers. It remembers. And below them, carved deeper, almost gouged. "Don't speak its name." Naomi takes a step back. "Zak, this house isn't haunted. It's occupied." Before I can answer, the whisper rises again. Not one voice, many, layered, colliding like wind funnels under the floor. "Zak," I freeze. Everything inside me freezes. The house has learned my name. The boards beneath us bulge, rising like something is pressing upward. The wood strains, groans, then settles again. Dust lifts into the air and forms the shape of a small cloud, drifting toward the hallway. It wants us to follow. Elias whispers, "Zak, I think it's leading us somewhere." He's right. The dust cloud floats down the hall and stops at the base of the staircase leading to the second floor. I sweep my flashlight upward. The steps are bowed with age. But one step in the middle is darker than the others. Stained, Naomi pulls her camera closer. "Blood?" I nod slowly. "That's not old," I say quietly. The whisper rises again, louder this time. The voices overlapping into a single stretched word. "Come." The entire staircase vibrates, the railing rattles, and then a single knock echoes directly beneath the first step. Knock, so loud it shakes dust from the ceiling. Something beneath the foundation has awakened fully. And it wants us to come upstairs, to go where the house's geometry feels wrong, where the children's bedrooms still wait, where the father's face in the portrait was scratched out. I lift my camera. "Okay," I whisper. "We're going up," and the house begins to breathe louder. The staircase groaned under my boots, each step bending like cartilage instead of wood. The air thickened as we climbed, warmer, heavier, as if the temperature wasn't rising but pressure was. My camera caught floating dust slowly drifting upward from between the steps like the foundation was exhaling beneath us. Halfway up, the second whisper came soft, stretched thin, like words pushed through wet soil. "Don't look back." Naomi stiffened behind me. "Zak, that didn't sound like a threat." "No," I murmured. It sounded like a warning. We reached the top of the stairs and stepped into the long upstairs hallway. The floorboards were warped, sloping slightly downward. It felt like walking in a tunnel carved by something beneath, not built above. There were 4 doors, 2 on each side, all half open, all breathing faintly with the same pulse as the floor. The first door on the left led to a child's bedroom. The wallpaper, circus animals, and faded balloons peeled in long strips. A wooden rocking horse sat in the corner, its paint chipped. One of its glass eyes was missing. I scanned the floor, 4 tiny shoe prints fresh, clear led from the rocking horse toward the center of the room. Then stopped, dead center, like the child simply vanished. "Are those recent?" Naomi whispered. I knelt and touched one of the prints. The wood was warm. Elias leaned in and whispered, "Zak, these aren't prints in dust. The pressure in the wood is actually indented." He was right. These weren't footprints left on top of the floor. They were pressed into it. Weight, force, like something small had stepped there, or something large pressed down from underneath. I stood slowly. "Roll audio," I said. Naomi opened her recorder. I spoke into the empty room. "Who was in here? Can you make another sound?" Silence. Then the rocking horse shifted just once forward, like someone pushed it. The creak echoed through the room. My EMF meter shot from green to yellow. Then the whisper rose again, this time from the middle of the floor directly beneath the last footprint. A child's voice. Small, frail, breathy. It's still hungry. Naomi backed into the doorframe. Zak, this isn't just a haunting. This feels like a confession. I moved to the next room, another child's bedroom. This one was more intact. A bed with decaying blankets, a closet door hanging open just enough to be unsettling, a drawing pinned above the pillow. I stepped closer. It was a crayon picture, a house, a family, a son with a face. But beneath the drawing, a black shape was scribbled under the house in thick, angry strokes. It stretched like a shadow with too many limbs. A single word was written in shaky child handwriting. Under. This kid knew, I whispered. Knew what? Elias asked. That something wasn't haunting this place. Something was living beneath it. I scanned the walls. Deep scratches, long vertical gouges ran from floor to ceiling. Claw marks? No. Too symmetrical, too deliberate, as if something was dragged upward repeatedly. The closet door creaked an inch wider. I swung my flashlight inside. Nothing but darkness. But the floor inside the closet was wrong, slightly raised, like the boards had swollen from below. I pressed my foot on it. The wood flexed downward, then a tap answered from beneath it. Once, twice, then a long, slow drag. Something alive was down there, something that moved. Zak, Naomi said, voice cracking, let's get out of this room. But I stepped deeper in. I had to know. I had to test if the presence followed patterns. I used my knuckles and tapped the floor. Knock, knock, knock. Silence. Then, knock, knock, knock. Pause. Knock. A different pattern. A reply. A conversation. I lifted my recorder. Do you understand me? Knock. A single, heavy knock. Yes. What are you? Silence. Then a whisper came through the closet floorboards like a sigh forced through dirt. Older than here. The temperature plummeted. My breath fogged. The smell of soil and decay poured through the cracks. Naomi grabbed my arm and hissed. Zak, that's not a person. No, I said quietly. It's not. The boards beneath the closet suddenly surged upward like something hit them from below. Dust exploded into the room. Elias stumbled backward. What the hell was that? I leaned closer, too close, and felt a breath of hot air rise through the cracks. Not cold, hot, like something below was exhaling onto my face. The whisper rose again, this time inches from my boots. Why did you wake me? I backed out, fast. That thing knows we're here, Naomi said, pale shaking. It's been listening since we entered the house, I said, and now it's learning. We shut the closet gently and moved into the hallway again. The third door was a bathroom, shattered mirror, collapsed tub, rust stains like dried blood. The pipes inside the walls were vibrating, as if something was crawling through them. I didn't stay long. The final door on the right led to the parents' bedroom. The bed still stood in the center of the room. Blankets thrown aside like someone left in a panic. A wardrobe door was open, clothes still hung inside, untouched by time. On the wall above the bed was a second portrait, the same family from the living room photo. But this one had been defaced differently. The father's face wasn't scratched out. The mother's was, and the children's eyes had been darkened with something black ink, soot, or something much worse. Naomi walked to the nightstand. Zak, look at this. She lifted a small leather-bound journal. The last few pages were intact. The handwriting was frantic. It whispers through the vents, through the dirt, through the pipes. It knows the children's names now. It tells them to come downstairs. It said it remembers the ones before us. We need to leave before it chooses one of us. Below the final entry, one line was etched so deep the pen tore the page. The foundation is not the beginning, it is the mouth. I exhaled slowly. That means the basement isn't where it lives, it's where it feeds. Elias asked quietly, where's the beginning then? Before I could answer, the entire house shook violently, powerfully, like something enormous slammed against the underside of the floor. The hallway lights flickered. Wallpaper peeled upward as if suction pulled it toward the ceiling, and the whisper that followed wasn't a voice. It was a chorus, Hundreds of overlapping whispers layered into a single grievous moan. Come down. The basement. It wanted us downstairs. Or no, it wanted us under the basement. Naomi grabbed my shoulder. Zak, we shouldn't go down there. Whatever this is, it's old, it's deliberate, it's aware. I looked toward the staircase leading back down. Every step was vibrating. Every board was breathing. Every whisper was rising. This is our job, I said finally, and something beneath this house has been waiting for decades for someone to answer it. Elias swallowed hard. So, we're going down? I nodded. We moved as a team toward the basement door, and as we approached, the door slowly opened on its own, inviting us inside. The basement door whispered shut behind us as if the house had lungs. The sound sealed the upper rooms into a hush that felt louder than any scream. For a moment, I stood with my hand on the knob, feeling the timbre of the wood alive, resonant, almost conversational. The house had personality, it had rhythm, and now it had us inside its ribs. The stairs down smelled like wet earth and iron. Concrete replaced wood at the bottom, cold and unforgiving under my boots. My flashlight swept across concrete walls scored with initials and dates. Some were decades old, others fresh, recent. A timeline scratched into the foundation. Elias set the camera on a tripod and adjusted the low light. Naomi placed a recorder on the lowest step. We were methodical because that's what we do. But method never made anything beneath that concrete less intimate. It felt like walking into the throat of something that had been swallowing memories for years. At the far end of the room, an iron hatch sat bolted into the floor. Chains circled its circumference, heavy and corroded. There was a scent sour and green that rose from the seams. On the concrete around the hatch, someone had drawn a circle of salt. Not perfect, rudimentary, but deliberate. Someone had known how to try to keep it in. I crouched beside the circle. The salt had been disturbed, the edges swept inward. The pattern told a story. Containment attempted, then failed, corrected, then failed again. I spoke into my recorder, low and clear. Who made this circle? Who tried and failed to keep you down? Silence, long and patient. The kind of silence that lets you imagine useless answers. Then, under the concrete like a hum, a voice stretched upward. Not a single tone layers, many, like stones rubbed together. We fed them names. The recorder spiked. Naomi swallowed audibly behind me. Elias's lower lip trembled. What names? I asked. The voice changed, folding syllables over each other like cloaks. The ones you forgot. A slow metallic scrape began at the hatch's edge, moving like fingernails dragged with intention. The chains rattled. Something under the floor pushed toward the bolts, testing. I keyed the EMF. The meter slammed into a level I'd only seen once before during a lockdown investigation where the team nearly didn't make it out. The air felt electrically charged, and not just the equipment. My scalp prickled. Every hair stood like antennae. Naomi's voice was a thread. Zak, it's learning to use the chords, the metal. It's turning matter into language. Can you pin it with thermal? I asked Elias. He nodded, hands shaking. The thermal showed the hatch cooler than the surrounding floor, an unnatural negative, then a tiny blue spot pulsed beneath the chain. Another negative spot appeared and moved like a creature breathing. I leaned closer. If you want out, tell me why you wake. Tell me who you are. This time the answer ran through my skull as a pressure. Images sliding in without sound. A sunken riverbed, hands pushing through dirt, children calling a name into a hole and laughing. Names like pebbles sent down a well. I remember how you fed me, the thought-like voice said. Names are soft, names are flavor. A chill clotted behind my sternum. The house had turned identity into sustenance. Naomi pointed to the ledger pages I'd brought with me, notes Alistair had written in a different life. He had tried to map the sensation to give the thing parameters. His script suggested offerings of sound, not to summon but to distract. Lullabies, spoken names, rote memories. People had tried to keep it pacified with attention. They had fed it their family songs, their voices, their little ones' names. Now, it wanted more than songs. It wanted definition. It wanted to be recognized. The hatch vibrated as if laughter passed beneath. A pressure wave hit my chest, and for a heartbeat I felt the slippery sense that someone else, some other, stood just behind my ribs, watching. Zak, Elias said, voice hoarse. My footage is picking up shapes under the floor. Faint, but they're there. Faces, like impressions, moving. I wiped my hand across my face. We document. We don't play into it. But the thing had learned to play. It coaxed. It mimicked. It remembered Naomi's voice and folded it into phrases to make us turn. It repeated names to see which response fed it strongest. It had patience. Hunters have patience. Predators have patience. A sudden thump reverberated through the hatch. Then another, quicker, urgent. The chains jerked as though something tried to push the iron aside. Dust rose from a seam and formed an almost limbless shape that hovered a few inches above the concrete. I focused my camera until the image filled the monitor. A blur forming cheekbones and a smile, then falling away like candle smoke in a draft. The sound in the room shifted into a cadence, an invocation that was also a memory. A lullaby named in 4 voices, each one from a different era, one from the ledger, one old and cracked, one juvenile and bright, one that sounded like Naomi's mother rhythm when she'd said hello earlier. Stop feeding it, I said sharply. Record on silent. No repeat of voices, no answers. We froze like statues. The lullaby faded. The shape under the hatch pulsed, angered by silence. The house hummed a frequency that made the lights flicker. The paint on the walls seemed to breathe. The thing wanted interaction. Attention stretched like a leash. If you gave more, it learned to mimic deeper faces, phrases than identities. What if we bind it? Naomi asked, voice small. Not with names. Not with fear. With place. With a word that means nothing, no history, no echo. I thought of the ledger again. Alistair's last annotations had been frantic. A name can tether, a name can bind if the name is not human, if it is constructed without association. The ledger sketched nonsense words, syllables never spoken in the local dialect, sounds that couldn't hold a history. I whispered one of them from the edge of memory. The syllables tasted like iron and ash on my tongue. The letters slid across my teeth like filing. The hatch thudded. The chain sawed at itself like a complaining animal, then stilled. The negative blips in the thermal faded, replaced by a slow warming under the bolts. It was working temporarily, but I could feel the thing pushing back, learning to shape that new sound into something it could use. We had to seal it. Not with charm, not with applause, but with geometry. Circles of salt, communities of names abandoned, and a ritual of silence to starve it. The ledger provided a partial blueprint. We moved fast. Naomi sprinkled salt along the circle's edge, while Elias tied wire to the bolts and threaded strips of cloth under each chain link. I spoke the nonsense syllable soft, deliberate every few minutes to reinforce the tether. Each repetition made the air shudder. Each time the thing tried to pull my syllable into a human cadence, but the ledger's instruction held, meaningless binds. Minutes turned into a slow hour. The hatch shivered as though shrugging off restraints, then drew inward like someone settling down to sleep. The chorus beneath the floor softened into a thin, sullen whisper. We need evac if this loosens, Naomi said. Her hands were shaking, but the salt circle held. The air still thrummed, but the pressure decreased just enough that my breathing returned to me. For the first time since we descended, I felt something like relief, not victory. Containment is not destruction. It is a pause between moments. We left the ledger bound under the last coil of chain, wrapped in cloth and salt. We documented everything, but the sense of documentation felt shameful. What we recorded would become folklore, bait for others. We left warning messages on the roadway outside names we would never speak again, scribbled in chalk with the ledger's nonsense syllables scrawled below like a lock. The house watched us walk up the stairs with all the attention of a thing that had just been tamed for the night. It watched our boots crunch the gravel outside and the car lights swallow the horizon. But as I drove away, the rear view caught something at the parlor window, a small shadow with a face like a child, watching us leave. It mouthed a word that wasn't on any language chart. It was one syllable, familiar, yet empty. It looked like it was learning to keep names, not just eat them. And that made the drive home quiet in a way that felt less like peace and more like a warning. We'd put a lid back on it for now. We'd tricked the mouth with silence and nonsense and geometry. But silence is only a delay. Beneath that foundation, the whispers organized. They cataloged our voices, the ledger's syllables, the pattern of salt we'd left. They were not done with us. We had only paused a habit that fed itself on memory. The house had not forgotten how to taste. We left the ledger under the chains like a bruise left to scab. We drove away with the house behind us, small as a memory in the rear view. I thought containment meant distance, that if you put enough salt, enough nonsense syllables, enough geometry between you and a thing, you could graduate from fear to routine. I was wrong. The house learned faster than I expected. 2 days after the containment, the first sign came at 3 in the morning. My phone buzzed an unknown number. The audio clip attached was 10 seconds long. Static, a child giggle cut in half, then Naomi's voice saying very plainly, "Zach?" Except it wasn't Naomi. The cadence was wrong. The pitch bent at the end like something attempting the sound for the first time. I drove back to the property that night with 3 people awake in my passenger seats. The street lights burned like distant suns as I turned onto the drive. The porch light of the Loring house was on. A small pale glow in an upstairs window pulsed as if a lamp was breathing. I parked. The air smelled like wet earth and dishwater. Naomi met me at the car, hollow-eyed. Elias loaded the gear with hands that trembled like somebody who'd been holding a secret too long. We had come back because silence had been broken not by the house alone, but by our own names being used against us. Inside, the salt circle was still there, but disturbed at the edges. The cloth wrappings were damp. The ledger lay where we'd left it, pages closed like eyelids. When I touched it, the leather was warm. Warm enough that my skin registered it as attention. We set up again, but this time we didn't taunt. We didn't sing. We spoke the ledger's nonsense syllable quietly, in turns, to reinforce the tether. We left a camera on the porch and placed passive recorders all through the neighborhood. We stayed away from voices. We avoided names. The first hour passed like a held breath. Then the lights in the living room flickered. The family portrait in the foyer had changed the girl's head, now tilted slightly toward the stairwell. When I focused the camera, the image on the monitor showed the same tilt, but when we walked into the room, the picture was the same as we left it. No movement, no tilt, as if the house could alter the frame's image, but not the photograph itself. A whisper curled under the floorboards and slid up my shin like oil. This whisper had an accent one that matched my late father's pronunciation when he said my name in a question. It said, soft and intimate, "Zach?" It was a weapon. It was mimicry aimed at memory. It knew which syllables would make my chest loosen. It knew how to make me ache with longing and mistake the ache for safety. I didn't answer. Instead, I walked to the hatch and peered down. The circle of salt we'd built remained intact, but a hairline crack had appeared right over the ledger. Dust sifted through it in a thin stream, like breath escaping. The ledger's binding quivered, as if punched by an invisible fist. Naomi dropped to her knees and began to pray under her breath. Not a ceremony, but a human attempt to summon steadiness. Elias was vomiting into the sink. I stood alone in the doorway, recorder in hand, and realized the ledger was not a book, but a mirror. Every attempt to name the thing taught it new language. Every silence made it listen harder. We did what we always do, document and retreat. We tightened the circle. We rewired the bolts. We wrapped the ledger in fresh cloth and salt and buried it under rebar and concrete in an attempt to separate it from the air. We left and posted warnings around the property, simple messages. Do not approach, do not listen, do not speak names. We told ourselves that was enough. It wasn't. Within a week, Naomi woke screaming. She said her daughter's voice had come through the baby monitor, though the baby was asleep in another city. The voice called Naomi's nickname something only family uses. Naomi clutched her phone and sobbed because the voice promised everything she missed, and then asked for a detail only Naomi would know, the color of a blanket her grandmother used to knit. It wasn't asking for a name to take, it was auditioning. Elias began seeing shadow people. At the edge of his vision, faces formed in the corners of mirrors, briefly, as if memory attempted to become flesh. He said once on tape, voice shaking, "It looks like anyone you think of. It looks like my mother when she was angry. It looks like a stranger on the bus. It looks like hunger with a face. Ollie, this is the real danger. It doesn't want to scare you away anymore. It wants to become you to get in." I sat in my house for 2 days and refused to sleep, listening to the recorder playing back our last hour at Loring House again and again. There were pockets of silence, then a thin ribbon of sound that wasn't audible in real time but appeared when slowed, a scraped whisper saying my name backward in a way that hurt to hear. I realized we'd made a fundamental error. We assumed containment was a closed loop. We thought isolation would starve it. But identity, once tasted, becomes a memory like sugar. It ferments and grows. It sends out tendrils looking for mouths that can still speak what it hasn't learned yet. So we went back. This time the goal was not to merely contain, it was to anchor. We approached the house with heavy gear, thermal mapping, Faraday shielding, broadcast jammers to cut off any mundane relay, thick concrete bags, a custom ritual construction guided by Alistair's ledger and updated by our own field observations. We planned to place physical anchors, metal rods driven into the bedrock beneath the hatch and wired to ground, a modern attempt at ancient geometry. We planned to replace the ledger with a constructed dummy, a ledger of mirrors pages reflecting only nonsense syllables we fed into it but which couldn't be mapped back to names, a vocabulary locked in meaningless sound. The night we did it, the house fought back. The hatch threw itself upward with enough force to dent the concrete rim. Chains snapped like bones. The thermal readouts spiked to impossible values. My chest felt like it was being expanded with cold and heat at the same time. The thing had learned to touch metal and make it sing. But we were methodical. We tied every anchor, cast every salt ring, threaded every nonsense syllable into channels like wiring. Naomi spoke the ledger syllable with the cadence of a metronome and repeated it until words tangled. Elias worked the thermal rig until his hands bled. I hammered rods into bedrock and felt my arms shake with the physical effort of fighting something that had no body and used our memories as tendons. When the last anchor went into the ground, the house did not explode. It did not howl. It simply became very, very quiet. The kind of quiet like a predator that decided you were no longer prey but a very small piece of history that might one day be interesting again. We left at dawn, exhausted and raw, but the ledger remained under the hatch, sealed, buried, weighted, and the anchors hummed faintly like a prayer wire strung into the bedrock. We drove away believing we had done something necessary. We told ourselves that anchors could hold when ritual alone failed. 2 months passed. Life resumed into a kind of fragile normal. Our feeds filled with other cases. We checked Loring House remotely. No lights, no odd thermal blips, only routine animal movement. The jammers played their quiet electric noise and the neighborhood cameras showed only the occasional prowler. I calmed. I let my guard slip. The mistake is always letting your guard slip. That's how predators learn you will forget. One morning the team shows up to work and Elias is late. We expect his grumpy text. We expect him to walk in, muttering about coffee, carrying stale pastries. This time the silence is heavy. His partner opens the studio door and hands me a small envelope. Inside is a single Polaroid. It's a picture of our crew Elias, Naomi, and me taken from the exact angle of our operations van a week before. In the photograph, we're blurry with motion. Behind us in the photo, at the porch window of Loring House, stands a small figure with a face like a child and hands like roots. Its mouth is open like it's saying something. On the back of the Polaroid, in childish block letters, is a sentence I will never forget. We like your names. That's when the ledger's real cost becomes obvious. You can anchor a place. You can tamp a mouth shut. But once a thing knows how to call your name, really know it. From the inside out, it has a line into you that passes through walls, through cell towers, through the fabric of memory. It doesn't need to tear down the house if it can whisper through a grain of sound and make someone answer. We doubled the anchors. We removed every trace of our names from the internet for a week. We tried to starve it by being nameless for our lives. It helped a little. Sometimes silence is enough to make a throat bored. But silence doesn't erase memory. It only buries it. Now I keep the ledger under lock with the anchors in place. The house hibernates in a way that looks like sleep. The thermal maps show the hibernation of something vast and patient. But there are times late nights when I'm alone and the house's wind hits my window when I hear a whisper just under the floor of my own apartment building. A sound shaped like the syllable we used in the ledger, like a test. We learned a harsh truth in this investigation. Some things beneath our foundations do not want to be freed because they seek more than escape. They seek conversation, they seek language, they seek to be named. And once they learn the taste of a name, they do not forget. If you hear a whisper rising from the ground near an old house, if it knows the color names of the blankets in your childhood home, or the name you never told anyone, don't answer, don't say it back. Build geometry where you can salt, metal anchors, ridiculous nonsense words with no history. Most of all, remember this. Silence can be a shield, but it can also be invitation. The more the thing learns the human voice, the hungrier it becomes. Tonight, when I close my eyes, I still hear the house breathe through the foundation. It does not ask for names now. It simply remembers them, catalogs them like a library, and waits for someone to come back and read. And somewhere under a bedrock seam, it murmurs the syllables we taught it, testing them like teeth on a tongue, learning the taste of a world that calls itself by name. If you ever hear your name whispered from the dirt, treat it like a stranger at your door. Don't open, don't speak, walk away, and never, ever stop listening. Because beneath the foundation, the thing we woke up is practicing the language of us.